Welcome to Tansson TV Plus. Of course, I'm Brandon.
And I'm Mom.
Thank you so much for joining us here today.
Yep, thank you for joining with us again.
As you know, we always love doing this. And Mom, how are you doing today?
Brandon, I am doing fine. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. January's progressing quite well.
It is. It's progressing really quickly, Brandon.
Yes, it definitely is.
Yes. Are you ready to talk about another episode of Facts of Life, Brandon?
Mom, I sure am. What episode are we speaking about?
Just so as a reminder to everybody, we are just spending some time for the next couple of months kind of watching and talking about Facts of Life as it progresses through the years. So today we're talking about the episode called Graduation.
Yes, this is a full hour-long episode, and it released May the 4th of 1983.
Yep, and this is season 4, episode 23 and 24.
And Mom, are you ready to dive into it?
I am, Brandon, and actually, I'm going to be real quick about this one, about the synopsis. Basically, Blair and Joe graduate from high school.
Well, Mom, thank you so much.
You're welcome, Brandon.
And overall, what did you think about this final episode set at Eastland?
You know, it was not quite the final episode set at Eastland, but I did like this episode, Brandon. I like the progression of Blair and Joe, and so I thought it was a nice episode.
Yes, I definitely did like it as well. And Mom, I know that for quite a while of this series, we've have our sort of favorite episodes and those that we've memorized. Is this one of your memorized episodes?
It is not one of my memorized episodes.
And I will say that out of the episodes that we are speaking about for this sort of deep dive analysis over these few weeks, this is probably one of the episodes I've seen the least.
Actually, and I would agree with you there too. I have not seen this episode a lot of times. There are some episodes, as you have mentioned, that I have basically memorized, and this is not one of them. I did have to watch it really carefully because it had been a while since I'd seen it.
And overall, after rewatching it, how much did you or did you not remember?
Well, I remember bits and pieces of the episode because I've seen it throughout the years. It's just it's not one that I look for. And so, I remember Blair and Joe graduating. I remember them being conflict with their family and hit both their families, really. I remember that, of course, the girls, meaning the girls who were left, that would be Natalie and Tootie. I remember that it hit them that they were leaving. And so those things I did remember.
Okay. And I will say, at least for me, that in going through this, I thought it was so interesting. Being able to see the dynamic and how much it really focused on, truly the dynamic, the friendship, and the evolution of Blair and Joe. And Mom, I know since this is the conclusion of season 4, the last time we spoke about the series, just last week, was the beginning of season 2 when we were first introduced to Joe. So we jumped ahead a couple years.
Yeah, we jumped ahead a couple years and we do see the progression of Jo as a character. We see that she has grown as a character and that even though I think school actually always meant something to her, she just wasn't going to admit to anyone. We see that she's a valedictorian. She is the smartest girl there. We see that she's very concerned about the speech she's going to give, and we see that she is concerned about how our parents are doing. She's concerned about Blair also. So as a character, she's grown.
And I will say that not only has she grown, but her parents have as well, who have a prominent role sort of within this undertaking of an episode.
Yeah, we see her mother, and I can't recall when her mother was first brought in, but we see in this particular episode, we see her mother. Her mother does talk about the fact that she is a waitress. We see her father, who's trying to do everything he can to kind of to prove things not just to Joe, but to her mother also. And her parents are divorced, and so you can see that as they are leaning on each other in this particular episode, although very broadly, but you can see that they are trying to kind of mend some fences between each other.
And and what's interesting about this is, as we were discussing while watching, is yeah, again, this is not an episode I've really seen that much, but this is probably the only episode I've ever seen. I know she was in other episodes, but this is the only episode I've seen actually that includes Joe's mom.
Yeah, I remember you saying that, and we did look it up, and I can't remember how many episodes she was on, but it was on very few. But I will say, I think the characters, the way the writers have written them, it seems as though they talk about their mothers or their parents on a regular basis. And so it seems as though we have seen them more often than what we actually have seen on the series. And then when you looked it up, I was actually shocked at the amount of episodes, which is not as many as I thought.
Yes, and with you saying that, of course, having heard about the parents and everything, I know one of my favorite episodes, which is a few seasons later in season six, titled "Slices of Life," where Joe has her own sort of pizza. She references her mom a lot, and so for me, seeing this now. With her in it, I can definitely see sort of where that episode even draws inspiration from. All that saying that the show has always done a great job at progressing forward really well and being organic to the characters and the storylines.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Brandon.
But heading over to Blair, it seems that there was a tad of a conflict off screen with Blair's dad.
Yeah, apparently he has something to do. And so he is supposed to be there for the graduation. He apparently does come. And then something comes up and he has to leave. And so that's something that Blair has mentioned that has happened previously, but she was sure that he was going to be there for the graduation. I cannot remember right now whether or not they said he was coming back for the graduation itself, but at least for the initial festivities, he was not going to be there. But Joe's mother is there, and what's nice is actually her cousin Joe, Jerry, is there also.
Yes, I really do like the inclusion of cousin Jerry as well. I thought that was just very fitting, and I like that we're able to take these sort of loose elements that we learned about the both of these characters and really include them within this episode. One of the few times as well that we actually get, I guess, a grouping of parents all in one episode.
Yeah, we do get a nice grouping appearance, and it's not. It was nice to see their interaction, and we also got to see, Joe and Blair's mothers interact, which is something I can't recall seeing. So it was nice to see them interact with each other.
Yes, and I will say that I've always liked the relationship that Joe has with her dad, and so I like that they're able to sort of show that off within this episode as well.
Yeah, that's true too.
And what's interesting is, even though of course they're both excited for their parents to be here, is that both of them get in feuds with their respective parents within this episode.
Yep, I guess it's the stress of the graduation.
But switching gears a little bit, what would you say like are Natalie and Tootie's roles in this, or what about Mrs. Garrett?
Well, I thought that Natalie and Tootie were they both said what I think the audience probably is thinking about, and that is the fact that they are mentioning that they are not going to be together any longer. Which, of course, I'm sure those who are watching the show must have thought, well, now that they're graduating, how are you going to keep four kids together who are two of them are in two different spectrums, meaning you have a pair that's off to college, you have a pair that are in high school, and then something that they occasionally do bring up with not Blair, but with Tootie and Natalie is that there's still a year age gap between them. So you've got three different grade levels here. And how do you kind of mix them all together when you've got the two extremes? And so that is something that both Tootie and Natalie both kind of bring up during during this last episode because they kept saying, "What are we going to do? We're not going to be together any longer." And then you have the thought of Mrs. Garrett. How does Mrs. Garrett fit into all that? And then I think it was Blair who made some reference. She says she made some reference, and I wrote it down somewhere where she talked about Mrs. Garrett, and she said, "Oh, we'll always be working for Mrs. Garrett." And so I thought that was kind of interesting that they kind of brought that up, and which made me wonder a little bit about the writers and what they had already thought through for the following year.
And speaking of that following year, of course, this is the end of the traditional 4 years that I should say Eastland was the primary continuous setting of the series. But would you say like if the show were to stop here, do you think that this would have been a satisfying conclusion, or would there have been more that you would have want to, because I definitely would say that, yeah, as we're speaking about this, this is sort of the end of that chapter of the show.
I thought overall, as a satisfying conclusion, I would have liked them to have ended to Tootie and Natalie. And I'm not quite sure how they would have done that, but I would have liked to see some closure there. But that would be the only thing because, like you say, with Blair and Joe, that part ended well. It was the other two who would have been left hanging along with Mrs. Garrett, and so I would like to have seen them kind of fix that if the show had ended at that time.
And what's interesting about this episode is that Mrs. Garrett is sort of running crazy, doing a whole bunch of, well, even though she's a school dietitian, she's doing a lot of what almost seems like catering stuff in this episode.
Yes, she does. So I guess they were setting the scene that we didn't quite realize. And I have to say that Facts of Life did quite a bit of that. And I will say that just as a foreshadow for Natalie and her family, they actually kind of set the scene for something that happened several years later on the Facts of Life. And it's not anything I want to talk about now, but I thought they laid the groundwork for an episode that happened probably like 3 years later based upon a year prior to this. And so I think Facts of Life was thinking ahead.
Yeah, I definitely think that they were very forward thinking and proactive in developing these storylines and where they wanted the characters to go. And so I think what was nice about this too, we saw a little bit of some small flashbacks, not anything too extravagant within this episode. More so with with Joe and Blair preparing for that graduation. And I thought what was interesting too, and Mom, I definitely would like to hear what your thoughts were, but of course, we didn't see the graduation ceremony, but we saw everything leading up to it, including them in their caps and gowns, about to walk into the auditorium. And then we see them, I guess, later that same day.
Yeah, we do, and they kind of come full circle because the I don't think we had to see the ceremony itself. The big thing was really Joe's speech, and we heard Joe's speech. They made a point of letting her say that, or at least as she rehearsed it before the ceremony began. I thought that was very appropriate. And at the end, we did see them all together helping Mrs. Garrett as a way to kind of bring the four girls back together before the summer began.
And with this being graduation, are you surprised at all? I mean, I know that you've seen the episode and you're familiar with the episode, but I guess in retrospect, are you somewhat surprised at all that some of the other girls that are no longer there weren't present within this? And I don't know what their grades were in relation to Joe and Blair, but while we saw other Eastland people, we didn't see any of those original girls.
No, we didn't. And I don't know if that would have been the best time to bring them back either. I know because I don't necessarily know if it was really established what grades they were all in at that point in time. And so, my guess it may have been Nancy who would have been the one who would have been the closest age to Blair. But since we don't know, I think I think the focus would have been lost also because the focus was really on the four of them together, and so the fact that they didn't bring them back at that time period, it made sense.
Yeah, I definitely think it did make sense too. And that brings up something almost that I meant to discuss about an episode or two ago in the sense that, of course the series is a spinoff of Different Strokes, and that this is the school that Kimberly of Different Strokes attended, but we never see Kimberly at Eastland.
No, which is very interesting. We do see the Facts of Life characters from the Facts of Life go on to different strokes, and they do speak to Kimberly, but we don't see Kimberly come on to Facts of Life.
Yeah.
But we do see her on the first episode. I think she's on the first one, but that's it.
But not only that, but she was more of a visitor than as opposed to someone who's just maybe in Eastland on the other side of the campus.
Yes, yes, true. That is true.
But for context, for those who have not seen the season, is that by this point in the in this fourth season, all of the original girls have gone away, having been reduced to recurring guest spots throughout seasons 2 and 3.
Yes, yes. But at this point in time, it really was just about the four girls.
Yes, and right before the season began was The Facts of Life Goes to Paris, which we discussed in a movie discussion. So for those tuning in, feel free to check out that discussion.
Yeah, please do check out that discussion.
And Mom, what would you rate this graduation episode?
Well, Brandon, I like to rate the TV shows 1 through 5, 5 being the highest. I gave this one a 3 because it's a nice episode. There's nothing wrong with this episode. It is not one that I kind of go towards.
That makes sense. And Mom, I'll have to say I agree. And in terms of episode not going towards, what's kind of interesting is because while I do, of course, remember that the girls went to Iceland and remember some of their adventures, is that oftentimes I revisit the later seasons of the series, but it's very rare outside of a few episodes, including the episode right before this. Um, Outside of that, yeah, that episode, I don't really revisit a lot of the first four seasons.
No, actually, I don't either. And I think they kind of made a change. Well, I can't say what happened during that time period because I don't know what happened during that time period. I just know for the audience purposes that the change, you could see a shift in it. Um, just a season from here, you see a true shift. And that those two seasons after that were to me the funniest seasons that there were.
Absolutely, and continue tuning into our discussions to find out what that means.
Yeah, please do. I say anything else that you'd like to discuss about this episode, Brandon?
I don't think so. I mean, I thought it was a really well done episode. If the show had to end here, I wouldn't have left home crying, but I definitely would have liked to have seen a little bit more as to what the girls were up to. And I'm glad we can continue on with season 5 in our next discussion.
All right, Brandon. And right before we go, were there any connections with this one, or any different connections?
Not necessarily that I was aware of based off of this episode alone.
All righty. Well, then we thank everybody for watching today.
We look forward to seeing you next time.
All right. Have a great day, everybody.